A black woman traveling on a passport this nice? I don't think so. Officer Brett Wilson holds Patricia's passport between two fingers like it's evidence at a crime scene. Patricia keeps her voice steady. Sir, that's a legitimate federal document. I'm a surgeon traveling to Geneva. Sure you are. Wilson looks at Officer Davis. Tyler, you seeing what I'm seeing? Davis grins. Looks fake to me, Brett. Wilson tears the cover off. Davis grabs the pages and rips them apart. They work together, destroying it piece by piece. The shredded remains fall to the floor. Federal offense, ma'am. Using fraudulent documents. Wilson pulls out handcuffs. You're under arrest. Patricia's phone rings. The screen shows James, State Prosecutor Office. She tries to reach it. I need to take that call. No calls. Wilson locks the cuffs on her wrists. You can talk to your lawyer later, though I doubt any lawyer can help you now. What happens when cops destroy the wrong woman's passport? 72 hours earlier, Patricia Anderson's biggest concern was her presentation slides. She sat at her kitchen table in their Boston brownstone, laptop open, reviewing data for the 100th time. The International Medical Ethics Summit in Geneva. 2,000 doctors from 60 countries. Her research on implicit bias in emergency medicine would be live-streamed to 50,000 more. 3 years of work. 10,000 patient cases analyzed. The results were damning. Black patients waited 38% longer for pain medication. Black women died from pregnancy complications at nearly 4 times the rate of white women. Black children with appendicitis waited 34% longer for treatment. The numbers didn't lie. The system did. Patricia had grown up in Detroit. Her mother worked 2 jobs to keep 3 kids fed. Their apartment had peeling paint and winters cold enough to see your breath indoors. But her mother had one rule that never changed. Education is your way out. Harvard Medical School seemed impossible back then. Now Patricia had the degree framed on her wall. She'd made it out. Now she spent her career pulling others through. Her phone buzzed. A text from James. Working late again. Big case goes to jury tomorrow. Love you. Don't forget to pack your good shoes. She smiled. James always worried about the small things. They'd met 18 months ago at a fundraiser for criminal justice reform. He'd been the keynote speaker. She'd been there supporting a colleague. He'd made a joke about prosecutors and doctors both dealing with life and death decisions. She'd corrected his statistics on wrongful convictions. He'd asked her to dinner before the event ended. 6 months later, he proposed on the same spot where they'd met. James Anderson, the state's top prosecutor. The man who'd put 6 corrupt Riverside police officers behind bars. The prosecutor who made powerful people nervous. The one who didn't back down. But they kept their marriage relatively private. His cases made enemies. Death threats weren't uncommon. The fewer people who knew details about his family, the safer everyone stayed. Patricia closed her laptop. Her flight left Saturday morning. 6:48 departure. She'd arrive in Geneva with time to spare. She had no idea that Saturday morning would change everything. Saturday arrived cold and clear. Patricia dressed carefully. Navy suit, professional, confident. Her conference badge hung from a lanyard. Her carry-on held 3 days of clothes and a backup hard drive with her entire presentation. Her passport sat in her purse, valid for another 3 years. Stamps from medical conferences in London, Tokyo, Singapore, Johannesburg. She kissed James goodbye at 5:30. He'd stayed up waiting for her even though his case had drained him. That was James. Always present, always protective. Call me when you land, he said. I will. Good luck with the verdict. They're guilty. Jury knows it. I know it. Even their lawyers know it. She touched his face. Then come home and rest. You've earned it. Metropolitan Regional Airport, Terminal 3. 6:48 in the morning meant crowds, business travelers rushing, families juggling luggage, the usual chaos of a Saturday departure rush. Patricia joined the security line. 17 people ahead of her. She checked her watch. 90 minutes until boarding. Plenty of time. The line moved steadily. Shoes off, laptop out, liquids in a bag. She'd done this dozens of times. Then she reached the passport check station. Officer Brett Wilson sat there, scrolling his phone. He looked bored. 19 years on the job showed in the way he barely glanced at most travelers. White passengers moved through in seconds. Patricia handed him her passport. Wilson's eyes flicked to it, then to her, then back to the passport. Something changed in his expression. He held the passport longer than necessary, turned it over, held it up to the light. His jaw tightened. Anderson, that your married name? Patricia kept her voice neutral. Yes. You travel a lot? Wilson flipped through the pages slowly. I'm a surgeon. I present at medical conferences. Uh-huh, Wilson called over his shoulder. Tyler, come look at this. Officer Davis approached. Wilson showed him the passport. They whispered. Behind Patricia, the line grew longer. A white businessman in an expensive suit shifted impatiently. A young mother tried to keep two kids quiet. An elderly black woman watched with narrowed eyes. Davis nodded at whatever Wilson said. Then both officers looked at Patricia with new suspicion. Ma'am, we need to verify some information. Wilson stood, passport still in his hand. I've been through this checkpoint many times. That passport is completely legitimate. We'll determine that. Wilson gestured to his supervisor, Rachel Morrison. She approached, listened to his whispered explanation, then studied Patricia with cold assessment. Morrison nodded. Additional screening required. They took Patricia's passport to a back office. Davis positioned himself to block her from following. She stood there, carry-on at her feet, growing crowd behind her. Her phone buzzed. A text from her colleague, Dr. Stevens. Safe travels. Can't wait to hear your presentation. You're going to change how we treat patients forever. Patricia checked the time. 7:03. 75 minutes to boarding. The businessman behind her spoke loudly. Can we move this along? Some of us have important meetings. The elderly black woman 2 people back caught Patricia's eye. Her expression said everything. She'd seen this before. She knew exactly what was happening. A young woman pulled out her phone. Emma Johnson, 28, traveling to visit family. She started recording. Something felt wrong about this whole situation. Wilson returned, holding Patricia's passport like evidence. We're going to need enhanced secondary screening. Based on what specific irregularity? Patricia kept her voice steady, professional. She wouldn't give them an excuse. Based on my professional judgment. Wilson's tone made it clear that questioning him was a mistake. I'd like to speak with your supervisor. You're looking at the senior officer on duty. Patricia felt the trap closing. She knew the statistics. She'd studied them. Black travelers stopped at rates far exceeding their percentage of passengers. She'd presented papers on systematic bias in security screening. She'd just never expected to become the statistic. Behind her, Emma kept recording. The elderly woman, Judge Margaret Williams, watched every detail. She'd been a federal judge for 32 years. She recognized unlawful detention when she saw it. The departure board updated, Flight 462 to Geneva, now boarding in 68 minutes. Wilson examined Patricia's wedding ring. That real gold? The question landed like an insult. Excuse me? Just wondering how you afford international travel and expensive jewelry. There it was, the assumption underneath everything, the real reason she'd been stopped. Patricia took a slow breath. I'm a Harvard-trained surgeon. I can afford my own jewelry and my own travel. Wilson's expression hardened. He'd been challenged, in his airport, by a black woman who wouldn't stay quiet. He held up the passport one more time. Then he gripped it with both hands. Everything that happened next happened fast. This passport shows signs of tampering. Patricia stared at Wilson. That's impossible. It's a legitimate State Department document. We'll determine what's legitimate, Wilson's voice carried across the checkpoint, loud enough for everyone to hear. Ma'am, falsifying federal documents is a felony offense. The crowd behind Patricia went silent. I have never falsified anything. Patricia's voice stayed level, but something flickered in her eyes. Fear. Not of jail. Fear of being erased. Treated like she didn't exist. Like her credentials meant nothing. Davis moved closer. That's what everyone says when they get caught. Where were you really born? Wilson leaned forward. Detroit, Michigan. As stated in the biographical page of my passport. Convenient answer. Wilson looked at Davis. And your husband? Where's he from originally? Patricia paused. Careful. Why is my husband's background relevant to passport verification? I ask the questions. You answer them. That's how this works. Margaret Williams stepped forward from the line. At 68 years old, she'd seen enough injustice to recognize it instantly. Officer, I've been observing this interaction. This woman hasn't done anything wrong. Wilson barely glanced at her. Ma'am, step back or you'll miss your flight. I'm retired federal judge Margaret Williams. I've presided over thousands of cases. I know harassment when I witness it. I don't care if you're the Queen of England. Step back. Margaret didn't move. Instead, she pulled out her phone, started documenting, writing down badge numbers, times, exact quotes. Wilson turned back to Patricia, examined her ring again, let his gaze linger on it with obvious skepticism. Just wondering how someone in your situation affords all this. The words hung there, poisonous, clear. Someone in your situation. Patricia understood perfectly. I'm a pediatric trauma surgeon. I've saved over 200 children's lives. I can afford my own jewelry. Wilson's jaw clenched. She'd challenged him, again, in front of witnesses, in his airport. Rachel Morrison appeared at his shoulder. Brett, maybe we should run this through federal verification before... Rachel, I've got this. Wilson held the passport up to the light one final time, ran his thumb across the pages with exaggerated suspicion. Yeah, this is definitely counterfeit. I can feel the texture's wrong. You can't possibly determine... Patricia started. Wilson wasn't listening. Federal regulations require immediate confiscation and destruction of fraudulent identification documents. Don't you dare! He tore the passport, cover from binding. The sound cut through the terminal. Patricia lunged forward. Stop! Davis grabbed her arm, hard. Don't touch an officer. Wilson kept tearing. Photo page, visa pages, data page, each rip deliberate, methodical. He was enjoying this, the power, the control, the way this educated black woman couldn't stop him. The pieces fell to the floor like snow. Oops, Wilson looked directly at Patricia, smiled. Guess you're not flying anywhere today, doctor. He air-quoted the word doctor, making it clear he didn't believe her credentials either. Patricia dropped to her knees, gathered the torn pieces with shaking hands. Tears ran down her face. Not from sadness, from rage. From humiliation, from the absolute powerlessness of watching someone destroy something you needed and being unable to stop them. Around her, the crowd murmured. Emma's phone captured everything. Margaret wrote furiously in her notebook. The white businessman behind Patricia said nothing. He'd be through security in 4 minutes. Nobody would question his passport. Wilson pulled handcuffs from his belt. Actually, you know what? We're taking you into custody. Patricia looked up from the floor, passport pieces in her hands. On what charge? Attempted use of fraudulent federal identification. Conspiracy to defraud the United States government. Wilson grabbed her arm, pulling her to her feet. And assaulting a peace officer. I never touched you. You lunged at me when I secured the fraudulent document. I saw it. Tyler saw it. That's assault. Davis nodded. She definitely came at you aggressively, Brett. It was a lie. Emma's video would later prove that. But right now, in this moment, two officers' words against a black woman's truth. The handcuffs clicked shut around Patricia's wrists. Cold metal. Red marks already forming. Margaret Williams spoke up, voice carrying authority. I'm calling my attorney right now. This is unlawful detention. Wilson looked at her. You want to join her? I can arrange that. Emma kept recording. I'm streaming this live. 18,000 people watching. Wilson moved toward her. No filming in federal security areas. The departure board updated again. Flight 462 to Geneva. Final boarding call. Gate B22. Patricia's presentation. 3 years of research. Of 2,000 doctors waiting. 50,000 more watching online. All of it slipping away. Her phone rang. The screen lit up in her confiscated belongings bag. James. State Prosecutor Office. She couldn't answer. Wilson and Davis walked her toward the detention room. Her wrists in cuffs, her passport in pieces, her dignity shredded in front of dozens of witnesses. Nobody stopped them. The interrogation room was exactly what you'd expect. Concrete walls, metal table, two-way mirror. 7:36 in the morning and Patricia sat in handcuffs, watching her entire life unravel. Her phone sat in an evidence bag on the table, conference badge beside it, wallet, keys, everything that proved who she was, locked away from her reach. 20 minutes until her flight boarded. Not that it mattered anymore. Wilson sat across from her, boots on the table. Deliberate disrespect. So, Dr. Anderson, where did you purchase that fake passport? Patricia kept her voice steady despite the tears on her face. I am a licensed pediatric surgeon, Harvard Medical School graduate. My credentials are publicly verifiable through the state medical board. This is racial profiling. Oh, here we go. Wilson rolled his eyes. Everything's about race with you people, right? Davis leaned against the wall, arms crossed. If you'd just cooperated from the start, none of this would be happening. I have the right to one phone call. You'll get your call in due time. First, you answer my questions. Wilson pulled out a laptop, started typing. Says here you have outstanding warrants. 3 unpaid parking tickets in Detroit. I haven't lived in Detroit in 12 years. Says here it's you. Same name. Amara Hayes. Patricia stared at him. My name is Patricia. Patricia Anderson, not Amara. You're looking at the wrong person entirely. So now you're claiming you're not Patricia Anderson? Wilson leaned forward. Changing your story already? That's not what I said. You deliberately... Patricia stopped. Took a breath. He was twisting everything. Every word she said became evidence against her. Davis pushed off the wall. Why are you being so difficult? Just tell the truth and this all goes away. I am telling the truth. You destroyed a valid federal document without cause. We determined it was fraudulent. That's our job. Wilson's tone suggested this conversation bored him. Based on 19 years of law enforcement experience. 19 years of experience isn't a forensic standard. You need actual technical analysis, chain of custody protocols, federal verification. Don't tell me how to do my job. The PA system crackled overhead. Final boarding call for Flight 462 to Geneva, Gate B22. Final boarding call. Patricia closed her eyes. Her presentation. Gone. 2,000 doctors who wouldn't hear her research on how bias kills patients. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was living proof of the systematic racism she'd spent 3 years documenting. Wilson watched her reaction with satisfaction. That your flight? Shame. Should have thought about that before trying to use fake documents. Davis actually laughed. Patricia opened her eyes, looked directly at Wilson. I need to call my husband right now. Husband can't help you out of federal charges. He's the state's top prosecutor, the chief prosecutor for this entire state. Wilson's expression didn't change. He clearly thought she was lying. Sure he is, and I'm married to the governor. Davis joined in. They always claim to know somebody important. Always. His name is James Anderson. You can verify it in 30 seconds online. Lady, I genuinely don't care if your husband is the president. You committed a federal crime. The law applies to everyone. Wilson stood up. We're transferring you to county jail for processing. For a passport dispute? For document forgery? For assault on a federal officer? For whatever else we find when we run your background. Wilson headed for the door. Enjoy your weekend in lockup. The door opened before he reached it. Rachel Morrison stood there. Her face had gone completely white. Brett, you need to come out here, right now. I'm in the middle of an interrogation. The state prosecutor's office called 3 times. They're asking specifically about a Patricia Anderson. Morrison's voice shook slightly. And Channel 7 News is setting up satellite trucks in the terminal. They're saying she's married to... Wilson's confident expression flickered, just for a second. That's impossible. Davis looked between them. Wait. Anderson. Like, the prosecutor who just convicted those Riverside cops? Morrison nodded. Brett, if this is who they're saying she is, there's no way. But Wilson's voice had lost its certainty. He pulled out his phone, typed fast. His face changed as he read the search results. State Prosecutor James Anderson. First black chief prosecutor in state history. Known for aggressive prosecution of police corruption. Recently secured convictions against 6 Riverside PD officers. Married 18 months ago. A photo appeared. James Anderson in a sharp suit at a legal reform gala. Standing beside him, smiling, wearing the same navy suit she had on right now. Dr. Patricia Anderson. His wife. Wilson stared at his phone. The color drained from his face. Oh my God. In the interrogation room, Patricia sat alone. She didn't know about the phone calls yet. Didn't know Channel 7 had picked up Emma's viral video. Didn't know that in the past 40 minutes her story had been shared 52,000 times. She only knew that her flight had left without her. Her research would go unheard. And 2 police officers had destroyed her passport based purely on the color of her skin. Her phone rang again in the evidence bag. James, calling for the 5th time. Nobody answered it. Outside the interrogation room, Wilson's phone rang. Caller ID. Chief Williams. He ignored it. It rang again. Mayor's office. Again. State Capitol. Davis watched his partner with growing panic. Brett, what do we do? We followed procedure. We had reasonable suspicion. We destroyed the top prosecutor's wife's passport. Davis's voice cracked. And there's video, Brett. That woman was streaming it live. You smirked. You called her sweetheart. I was doing my job. You were showing off. You were... Davis stopped. Because they both knew the truth. Wilson had seen a black woman who challenged him and decided to put her in her place. And now that woman turned out to be married to the one prosecutor in the state who made his career destroying cops who abused their power. Rachel Morrison appeared again. This time she looked terrified. The regional director is here. The FBI is here, and... She swallowed hard. Prosecutor Anderson is here. Wilson grabbed the edge of the desk, steadied himself. We just tell the truth. The passport looked fake. We made a judgment call. It's not our fault she's married to... The door opened. Chief Benjamin Williams entered first. Full dress uniform, his face carved from stone. Behind him came Regional Airport Director Douglas Paulson. Then 2 FBI agents in dark suits, and finally, James Anderson. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Wilson made in a month. His eyes swept the room, taking in everything. The two-way mirror, the evidence bag with Patricia's belongings, the torn passport pieces in their plastic evidence container. Then his gaze locked on the interrogation room window. On Patricia, still in handcuffs, still sitting at that metal table. His jaw clenched. A muscle twitched. That was the only external sign of the rage building inside him. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, controlled, lethal. Would someone like to explain to me, very carefully, why my wife is sitting in handcuffs? Wilson tried to answer. Sir, we had reasonable suspicion that the passport was... I didn't ask you yet. James cut him off without raising his voice, without even looking at him. His eyes stayed on Patricia through the glass. Chief Williams, what happened here? Chief Williams gestured to one of his officers. Remove those handcuffs, right now. Davis fumbled with his keys, dropped them, picked them up with shaking hands. He entered the interrogation room. Patricia looked up as the cuffs came off, rubbed her wrists. Red marks stood out against her dark skin. James entered the room, crossed directly to her, pulled her into his arms. Patricia finally, completely broke down, sobbing into his shoulder, all the fear, rage, humiliation pouring out. I'm so sorry. James' voice was thick. I was in a classified briefing. I couldn't check my phone. I'm so sorry. They destroyed my passport, James. They treated me like... I know what they did. James pulled back, looked at her face, the tears, the exhaustion, the trauma in her eyes. Then he looked at the torn passport pieces on the table, evidence of what two officers had done to his wife. He turned to face the room. Every person there saw his expression change. The prosecutor emerged. The man who'd sent corrupt officials to prison. The man who didn't lose cases. I'm James Anderson, State Chief Prosecutor. I oversee every criminal case in this state. His voice carried absolute authority, including cases against law enforcement personnel who abuse their power. Wilson started to speak. James held up one hand. Wilson went silent. That's my specialty, actually. Prosecuting cops who think their badge makes them untouchable. James pulled out his iPad. Shall I show you my record? James swiped his iPad screen. Images appeared on the interrogation room monitor. Case after case. Convictions. Sentences. State versus Riverside PD. 6 officers convicted of civil rights violations. 15-year sentences. I prosecuted that case. Wilson's face went gray. State versus Officer Thompson. Evidence tampering. 8 years. I prosecuted that case too. Another swipe. State versus Metro Transit Police. $4.5 million settlement for systematic racial profiling. I led that prosecution. James looked directly at Wilson. I have a 94% conviction rate when prosecuting law enforcement. I've sent 49 corrupt officers to prison in the past 18 months. He paused. Let that sink in. And as of 1 hour ago, the governor personally assigned me to investigate this airport. Director Paulson spoke up, trying to salvage something. Prosecutor Anderson, we had absolutely no idea your wife was... Patricia cut him off. Her voice was steel. I shouldn't have to be married to anyone powerful to be treated with basic human dignity. The room went completely silent. James nodded. She's right. The fact that I'm who I am shouldn't matter. But since it does, he turned back to Wilson and Davis. You're about to understand exactly what that means. FBI agent Robert Cooper stepped forward. Dr. Anderson, we verified your passport through federal databases. 9 seconds. It's 100% authentic and legitimate. He held up his tablet. Green verification stamps covered the screen. Your credentials: Harvard Medical School, graduated top 5%. Michigan State Medical License, active and current. 0 criminal record. Spotless background. Cooper looked at Wilson. These officers had 0 legal cause to detain you. question you extensively, or destroy federal property. Wilson tried one more time. One more. The texture felt wrong. The paper... Describe your forensic document analysis training, Cooper said flatly. Wilson went silent. That's what I thought. You have none. You made an assumption based on nothing but prejudice. Chief Williams gestured to Wilson and Davis. Both of you, in here, now. They entered like men walking to their execution. James pulled up more data. Officers, let me show you something. The screen filled with statistics. Black passengers at this airport, 12% of travelers. Black passengers stopped by Officer Wilson for additional screening, 73%. He swiped again. Black passengers accused of fraudulent documents by Officer Wilson over the past 5 years, 96 incidents. Actual fraudulent documents discovered, 0. Wilson stared at the floor. White passengers stopped by Officer Wilson, 8%. White passengers with confirmed fraudulent documents caught by other officers, 15. James zoomed in on Wilson's face on the monitor. This data demonstrates clear, systematic, deliberate racial profiling spanning your entire career. I don't see color. I treat every passenger. The data says otherwise. Numbers don't lie. James switched screens. You want to know what else doesn't lie? Video. Emma Johnson's live stream played on the monitor. Crystal clear. Wilson's voice. A black woman with a Harvard degree? Flying first class to Europe? This passport's fake. The deliberate destruction. The pieces falling. The smirk. Guess you're not flying anywhere today, sweetheart. The way he air-quoted when he said doctor. James paused the video on Wilson's smirking face. 362,000 people have watched this video, including the governor, the U.S. Attorney General, every major news network. He turned to Wilson. You didn't just destroy a passport. You did it with contempt, with pleasure, because you saw a black woman who challenged your authority and you decided to humiliate her. Patricia stood up, walked to the center of the room. Her voice was steady now, strong. You called me sweetheart. You questioned if my wedding ring was real gold. You asked how I could afford international travel. She moved closer to Wilson. He couldn't meet her eyes. You saw a black woman and assumed criminality, assumed fraud, assumed I couldn't possibly be educated, accomplished, legitimate. Wilson said nothing. I'm a Harvard-trained surgeon. I've saved 206 children's lives. I published research that will change how doctors treat black patients in emergency rooms. Patricia's voice didn't rise, didn't need to. And you treated me like garbage because of my skin color. The door opened. Judge Margaret Williams entered, USB drive in hand. Prosecutor Anderson, I'm retired federal judge Margaret Williams. I witnessed this entire incident from the security line. She handed James the drive. Complete video documentation and my written statement as an officer of the court. Margaret looked at Wilson with absolute contempt. I identified myself as a federal judge. You told me you didn't care if I was the Queen of England. You dismissed a federal judge's witness testimony. She turned to James. In 32 years on the bench, this is the clearest case of civil rights violation I've ever personally witnessed. Davis finally broke, started crying. I just followed Brett's lead. I didn't think... You grabbed my wife's arm, James said quietly. You corroborated false statements on an official report. You're not a follower. You're an accomplice. Patricia looked at Davis. You laughed when he mocked my ring. You stood there and laughed at my humiliation. I'm sorry. I never meant... Sorry doesn't give me back my presentation. Sorry doesn't undo the trauma. Patricia's words hit like physical blows. Sorry is just a word. Agent Cooper spoke up. Prosecutor Anderson, the FBI has been investigating civil rights violations at airport checkpoints nationwide. This incident, with clear video, multiple witnesses including a federal judge, is exactly the test case we need. Good. James pulled out his phone, made a call. "This is Prosecutor Anderson. File the charges, both officers, state and federal. Maximum sentences, no plea bargains." Wilson's legs nearly gave out. "You can't." "I absolutely can." James ended the call. "Officer Brett Wilson, I am personally prosecuting you for deprivation of rights under color of law, destruction of federal property, false imprisonment, filing false official statements, conspiracy to violate civil rights, hate crime enhancement on all applicable charges." He paused. "Let each charge land. You're facing a minimum of 12 years in federal prison. Maximum, 25 years. Wilson's voice cracked. "I was just doing my job. Your job was to protect travelers, not terrorize them based on race." James turned to Davis. "Officer Davis, accessory to deprivation of rights, false statements in official capacity, conspiracy to violate civil rights, 8 to 15 years. Davis collapsed into a chair. "Please, I have 2 kids. I'll lose everything." Patricia's voice cut through his pleading. "I have a family, too. Did you think about my family when you handcuffed me? When you destroyed my passport? When you helped him humiliate me?" Outside the windows, a crowd had gathered. 200 travelers, signs visible. "We witnessed racism. Fire racist cops. Justice for Dr. Anderson." Emma's live stream showed on multiple phones. 392,000 current viewers. This was national news now. Real time. James pulled up another presentation. "This incident didn't happen in a vacuum. My office has been investigating this airport for 6 months. More data appeared. We sent 200 undercover travelers through this terminal. 100 black, 100 white. All with identical legitimate documents. The results were devastating. Black travelers stopped, 78 out of 100. White travelers stopped, 4 out of 100. Average detention time for black travelers, 45 minutes. Average detention time for white travelers, 8 minutes. James let the numbers speak. Officer Wilson personally stopped 62 black travelers, 1 white traveler. This pattern is statistically impossible without deliberate racial targeting. He switched to financial data. 96 documented false detentions of black passengers over 5 years. Missed flights, 84. Missed business opportunities. Estimated $3.8 million in lost revenue. Missed family emergencies, 23, including 3 funerals and 5 births. Patricia's voice added the final piece. And psychological trauma, incalculable. James turned to Rachel Morrison, who'd been trying to disappear into the corner. "Ms. Morrison, you dismissed every single complaint against Officer Wilson. All 5 formal complaints over 5 years. All dismissed." Morrison's face went white. "I followed departmental protocols for investigating. Your protocols were designed to protect officers, not passengers." James pulled up her signature on dismissal forms. All 5. "You're being removed from all supervisory duties effective immediately. You're being named as a defendant in our federal civil rights lawsuit, and we're investigating whether you should face criminal charges for obstruction of justice." Morrison looked like she might faint. Chief Williams stepped forward. "Officer Brett Wilson, Officer Tyler Davis. As of this moment, you are both suspended without pay pending completion of criminal investigations." Wilson tried one last time. "Chief, you can't just—" "Surrender your badges, weapons, and security credentials right now." Both officers complied with shaking hands. Wilson's badge, worn for 19 years, felt impossibly heavy as he unclipped it. His entire identity gone. James wasn't finished. "Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I'm filing a comprehensive federal lawsuit against this airport, against TSA, against the city, against every person who enabled this systematic discrimination." Director Paulson tried to interrupt. James held up his hand. Paulson stopped talking. "We're seeking $12 million in damages. Every penny goes to civil rights organizations and anti-bias training programs. James looked around the room. This institutional racism ends today. Patricia walked to the window, looked at the crowd outside. They were chanting now. She could hear it even through the glass. She turned back to face Wilson. I've dedicated my career to studying how implicit bias kills patients in emergency rooms, how doctors see black skin and stop processing facts, assume drug seeking, assume pain tolerance, assume non-compliance. She moved closer. You did the exact same thing. You saw my black skin and your brain stopped processing facts. You assumed criminality. You assumed fraud. Wilson couldn't look at her. If this happened to me, with all my education, all my credentials, with my powerful husband, imagine what happens every single day to black people who don't have those protections. The weight of her words settled over everyone. James added the final blow. Officer Wilson, you saw black skin and stopped thinking. That's the definition of racism, and you're going to pay the full legal price for it. Wilson's voice was barely audible. I have a family, 3 kids. I'll lose everything. My pension, my house, my daughter's in college. Patricia stepped very close to him, looked directly into his eyes. I have a family too. I have patients, children who depend on me. Did you think about any of that when you destroyed my passport in front of 20 people? James finished it. When you destroyed her passport, you didn't just destroy a document. You destroyed her ability to deliver research that saves children's lives. 2,000 doctors didn't hear that research today. Research about how bias like yours kills black children in hospitals. Wilson had no answer. No defense. Nothing. A reporter outside shouted through the glass. Dr. Anderson, will you seek maximum sentencing? Patricia looked at James. A long moment of silent communication passed between them. She turned to the window, placed her hand on the glass. The crowd erupted in cheers. Then she faced Wilson, Davis, Morrison, everyone in that room. This is just the beginning. We're going to make absolutely certain this never happens to another person again. James stood beside her. Every law enforcement officer in this state is going to learn there are real, serious, permanent consequences for racism. The camera caught Wilson's face in that moment. The exact second he realized his entire life was over. 2 hours later, the airport conference room was packed with journalists. 50 cameras, microphones everywhere, flash photography creating a strobe effect. James and Patricia stood at the podium, united front. Patricia's torn passport sat in a clear evidence frame on the table, physical proof of what had been done to her. James spoke first. His prosecutor voice filled the room. At 7:15 this morning, my wife, Dr. Patricia Anderson, a distinguished pediatric trauma surgeon and Harvard Medical School graduate, was racially profiled, falsely accused, and had her legitimate passport destroyed by Officer Brett Wilson. He paused. Let the cameras capture the passport fragments. As this state's chief prosecutor, I've dedicated my career to holding powerful people accountable when they abuse that power. Today, that mission became deeply personal. Patricia stepped to the microphone. I'm a Harvard-trained surgeon. I've saved over 200 children's lives. I've published peer-reviewed research on implicit bias in emergency medicine. Her voice was steady, strong. Today, I was treated like a criminal, not because of anything I did, because of the color of my skin. The room went absolutely silent. Officer Wilson didn't run my passport through verification systems. He didn't check databases. He didn't follow forensic protocols. He saw my black skin, made an assumption, and acted on that racial prejudice. Patricia's voice strengthened. This is America's original sin. The assumption that black people are criminals until proven otherwise. And it's still playing out every day in airports, hospitals, schools, and streets across this country. As she looked directly into the cameras. But I had something most victims don't have. Resources. A powerful husband. Video evidence. Witnesses who spoke up. Emma Johnson sat in the front row, Margaret Williams beside her. Both nodded. We're going to use every advantage we have to fight for the people who don't have those advantages. James played the full unedited video for the media. Emma's live stream, crystal clear audio and visual. Wilson's voice dripped with contempt. A black woman with a Harvard degree, flying first class to Europe? This passport's fake. The destruction, the smirk, the pieces falling. Guess you're not flying anywhere today, sweetheart. Gasps from reporters who hadn't seen it yet. Several were visibly angry. One veteran reporter from the Washington Post whispered to his colleague, "In 25 years covering civil rights, this is the most clear-cut case I've ever seen." James announced the consequences. Officers Wilson and Davis have been terminated. They face both state and federal criminal charges. I'm personally prosecuting the state charges. The U.S. Attorney's Office is handling federal prosecution. A reporter called out, "Will you accept a plea deal?" "Absolutely not. This goes to trial. The public needs to see full accountability." "What sentences will you seek?" "Maximum under state and federal guidelines. 25 years for Wilson, 15 years for Davis." The numbers landed like hammers. Patricia added, "We're filing a $12 million civil rights lawsuit. Every penny of any settlement or judgment goes to civil rights organizations and anti-bias training programs nationwide." That evening, Patricia and James sat alone in their hotel suite. They couldn't face going home yet. Too raw, too exhausted. Patricia finally, completely broke down. 20 minutes of sobbing, all the fear she'd held back, all the rage, all the humiliation. James held her through it all. "I was so scared," she whispered. "Not of jail, not of the charges. I was scared of being erased, made invisible, treated like nothing I'd accomplished mattered because of my skin." James's own tears fell. "You're the opposite of invisible now, Tricia. Your voice is going to change everything, I promise you that." "I'm sorry I wasn't there sooner." "You got there when it mattered most." They held each other in silence. Processing, healing. The next morning, the State Department called personally. The Deputy Secretary himself. "Dr. Anderson, we are profoundly sorry for what you experienced. We're expediting your passport replacement. Not 6 weeks, not 6 days, 24 hours. Hand-delivered by diplomatic courier." The new passport arrived in a custom diplomatic pouch, gold-embossed seal. Priority processing by direct order of the Secretary of State. A handwritten note accompanied it. "We are deeply sorry. Your voice matters. Your work matters. You matter. Secretary of State." Patricia held the new passport, felt its weight. This one would get her to Geneva. But first, she had to process everything that had happened. The national conversation exploded. Within 48 hours, 15 million people had watched Emma's video. Hashtags, Justice for Anderson, End Airport Racism, and Black Traveling. While Black all trended #1 globally. Major newspapers ran op-eds. The New York Times, How Dr. Patricia Anderson Became the Face of Airport Racial Profiling. The Washington Post, When Privilege Meets Racism, One Woman's Story. Television coverage on every network. Cable news ran the story constantly. Former president tweeted support. Senators introduced federal legislation. Most importantly, thousands of Black travelers began sharing their own stories. Stories that had been ignored before, dismissed, swept aside. Patricia's case had opened a floodgate. 72 hours after the incident, formal termination hearings concluded. The police union initially threatened to fight. Public backlash was immediate and overwhelming. Union headquarters received 50,000 emails and calls in one day. Union president issued a statement. While we support due process, the video evidence is overwhelming and disturbing. We will not contest these terminations. Wilson and Davis lost everything. All benefits. Wilson's 19-year pension, gone. Davis's 8-year pension, gone. Combined loss, $2.8 million. 2 weeks later, federal grand jury indictments came down. U.S. Attorney announced formal charges. Wilson facing 6 federal counts. Maximum, 25 years plus $250,000 fine. Davis facing 4 federal counts. Maximum, 15 years plus $150,000 fine. State charges filed simultaneously by James, 8 additional counts each. Legal experts were unanimous. The video makes this unwinnable. They should take a plea. James stated publicly, "No plea offers will be made. This goes to trial. Full accountability. Period." Wilson's previous victims came forward, emboldened. 31 additional formal complaints filed. Spanning his entire career, local investigative journalists dug deeper. A 19-year pattern of racism, Officer Wilson's hidden record, ran on the front page. Wilson's personal life imploded. Wife filed for divorce within 1 week. Public humiliation cited in court documents. 2 of his 3 children disowned him publicly on social media. House went into foreclosure. Legal bills mounted. Civil lawsuits multiplied. 18 former victims filed suits totaling $28 million. Wilson became a national symbol. Everything people hated about racist policing. Unemployable. A pariah. Davis took a slightly different path. He wrote to Patricia. Handwritten letter, full page. Dr. Anderson, I know sorry is inadequate for what I did to you. I was complicit in your humiliation and trauma. I was a coward who followed Wilson instead of doing what was right. I want to testify against Wilson at trial, and after I serve my sentence, I want to dedicate my life to training officers on recognizing and resisting complicity in racism. I know I can never make this right, but I want to try. Tyler Davis. Patricia showed James the letter. Do we believe him? Actions matter, words don't. Let's see if he actually testifies. Patricia considered carefully. If he genuinely helps prevent this from happening to others, maybe redemption is possible. Maybe. Metropolitan Regional Airport announced comprehensive reforms. Mandatory 120 hours of anti-bias training. Body cameras required for all airport police. Footage automatically uploaded. Public access within 48 hours. Independent Civilian Review Board established. Majority members from affected communities. Monthly statistical audits published publicly. Community Oversight Coordinator hired from the ACLU. Rachel Morrison reassigned to non-supervisory administrative role. 40% pay cut. 3 additional supervisors terminated for patterns of dismissing complaints. James introduced the Equal Treatment in Travel Act to the state legislature. Bipartisan support came quickly. Even conservatives didn't want to be seen supporting racism. The act required all airports to track enforcement actions by race, publish quarterly reports, automatic federal investigation if racial disparities exceeded 20%. State funding withdrawn from non-compliant airports. Within 3 months, 6 other states adopted similar legislation. Federal bill introduced in Congress. TSA announced the first-ever nationwide audit of racial profiling complaints. 150 airports voluntarily implemented body cameras before regulations required them. Change was happening. Slow, but real. 6 weeks after the incident, Patricia stood on stage in Geneva. The International Conference Center was packed. 2,800 attendees, 800 more than expected. Global media filled the back rows. She walked to the podium carrying something, a frame. Inside it, the torn pieces of her passport, carefully preserved. She placed it where everyone could see. The audience went completely silent. This was my passport 6 weeks ago. destroyed by an officer who saw my skin color and assumed I was a criminal. 3 minutes of standing ovation. Patricia waited. Let them process. I research how implicit bias kills patients, how split-second assumptions based on race end lives in emergency rooms. She advanced her slides. The data appeared. Officer Wilson saw my blackness and his brain stopped processing facts. He didn't check databases, he didn't verify. He saw black skin and presumed guilt. Patricia's voice carried to every corner. In healthcare, that exact same cognitive shortcut kills black patients every single day. The numbers told the story. Black patients 38% less likely to receive adequate pain medication. Black women dying from pregnancy complications at nearly 4 times the rate of white women. Black children with appendicitis waiting 34% longer for treatment. Every single one of these statistics represents preventable deaths. Deaths caused by bias. Deaths that could be prevented if we acknowledge the problem and train ourselves to override it. She showed her intervention data. When we implement structured anti-bias protocols in emergency departments, these disparities drop by 52% within 6 months. The audience leaned forward. This was actionable, fixable. Bias can be unlearned, but first, we have to admit it exists. 8 minutes of standing ovation, medical professionals from 60 countries on their feet, dozens crying openly. The conference chair approached the microphone. In 35 years of organizing medical conferences, this is the single most important presentation we've ever hosted. Patricia's research paper was downloaded 284,000 times in the first week. It became required reading at 92 medical schools within 2 months. The World Health Organization requested permission to use her research in their Global Healthcare Equity Initiative. Patricia donated her torn passport to the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. It became the centerpiece of a new exhibit, Evidence of Everyday Racism, 2025. The display included everything: passport pieces, video footage, Emma's phone, Margaret's witness statement, complete timeline. Over 50,000 visitors in the first month. School groups from across the country included it in field trips. The exhibit traveled to 12 cities in its first year. A quote from Patricia appeared on the wall. This passport represented my ability to share knowledge that saves lives. One man's bias destroyed it and nearly destroyed me. But we turned that destruction into a national conversation about change. Patricia's voiceover began, the kind that would be heard by millions. My story isn't unique. It's the story of millions of black people who navigate a world that presumes our guilt, questions our accomplishments, doubts our humanity. She paused. Let that settle. But what made my story different was resources and privilege. I had a husband who happens to be the state's most powerful prosecutor. I had retired Judge Margaret Williams, who documented everything and spoke up. I had Emma Johnson, who kept filming despite intimidation. I had strangers in that security line who called out injustice. Patricia's voice strengthened. Most victims of racial profiling have none of those advantages. Their stories disappear. Their trauma is invisible. Emma Johnson appeared on screen. Margaret Williams, the passengers who'd witnessed everything. These people had zero obligation to help me. Margaret could have made her flight and forgotten about me. Emma didn't have to risk her phone being seized. Those passengers didn't have to say this isn't right. Patricia looked directly into the camera. But they did. That is what real allyship looks like. Not social media posts, not hashtags. Actions in the moment when it matters most, even when it costs you something. The impact numbers appeared. Since my case became public, 103 additional victims of airport racial profiling have come forward, from 28 different airports across 15 states. Their voices were silenced for years, some for decades. Now they're heard. Patricia's face filled the screen. Because Emma pressed record. Because Margaret wrote down exactly what she saw. Because strangers spoke up. One act of courage unlocked hundreds more voices. Her tone shifted, warning now. Officer Wilson thought his badge made him untouchable, protected by 19 years of seniority and a supervisor who looked the other way. He thought he could humiliate me, destroy my property, and face no consequences. A pause, heavy with meaning. He was catastrophically wrong. Patricia stood in front of the U.S. Capitol now. The visual showed her transformation, from victim to advocate. No amount of power excuses cruelty. No uniform justifies prejudice. No seniority erases accountability. And "I didn't know she was important" is the worst possible defense, because it admits you only treat people well when they have power. The screen went black. White text appeared. What will you do the next time you witness injustice? Pause. Will you film it? Pause. Will you speak up? Pause. Will you intervene? Longer pause. Or will you look away? 4 seconds of black screen. The choice is yours. Choose courage. Choose action. Choose to be on the right side of history. Patricia appeared one final time, speaking directly to viewers. So I'm asking you, yes, you watching this right now, have you ever witnessed injustice and stayed silent? Have you seen someone mistreated because of their skin color and looked away? Have you thought someone should do something while you did nothing? She leaned forward slightly, direct, personal. Today I'm telling you directly. It is your place. It's all of our responsibility. 5 concrete actions appeared on screen. 1. If you see racism, film it. Your phone camera is a civil rights tool. Emma's video didn't just save me. It exposed a system, sparked reforms, protected future travelers. Your 90-second video could change someone's entire life. 2. If you witness profiling, speak up in the moment. Margaret Williams was 68 years old. She could have stayed silent, made her flight. Instead, she said, "This isn't right. I'm a witness. Don't assume someone else will intervene. Be that someone." 3. If you have privilege, use it as a shield. Stand between victim and abuser if safe. Use your race, your class, your credentials to protect others. Call supervisors. Demand badge numbers. If you're white and see a black person being profiled, speak up. Your words carry different weight. That's unjust, but it's reality. Use it. 4. If you run an organization, audit your data. Track everything by race. Look for patterns. They're there. Officer Wilson profiled black travelers for 8 years. The data was sitting right there. No one looked. What gets measured gets managed. Start measuring. 5. If you see injustice and stay silent, you are complicit. Silence helps the oppressor, never the victim. Neutrality isn't neutral. It's choosing the side of the abuser. Patricia's final message hit hard. Officer Wilson tore up my passport thinking he was destroying my dignity, my future, my voice. He thought he was putting me in my place, reminding me that people who look like me don't belong. Her eyes blazed. Instead, he revealed a truth that couldn't be hidden anymore. That racial bias still thrives in spaces designed to keep us safe. That just doing my job is the eternal excuse of everyone who's ever abused power. That the system protects the badge, not the victim, until we force change. Split screen appeared. Left side. Patricia on her knees, gathering torn passport pieces, tears streaming. Right side. Patricia at the U.S. Capitol podium, testifying before Congress, James beside her, surrounded by supporters. Text overlay. 6 months later, Equal Treatment in Travel Act passed in 8 states. Officers prosecuted for similar behavior nationwide, 34. Additional victims who received justice, 103. Airport racial profiling complaints down 68% nationally. Body cameras at airport security required in 200-plus airports. Change is happening. Patricia's voice returned one final time. We're not staying silent anymore. We're not accepting that's just how things are anymore. We're demanding accountability. We're demanding change. And we're getting it. One case at a time. One video at a time. One voice at a time. The screen faded to black. Then white text. Dr. Patricia Anderson's story could have been your story. Let's make sure it's no one's story ever again. Final frame. Clear calls to action. Share this story. Tag 3 people who need to see it. Drop your story in the comments. Have you experienced or witnessed racial profiling? Follow for more stories of power reversals and instant justice. Contact your representatives. Demand equal treatment in travel legislation in your state. Download the ACLU Mobile Justice app. Be ready to document rights violations. One last line appeared. Bold, unmissable. Act now. Have you ever witnessed racial profiling and stayed silent? What will you do next time? Share your story in the comments. This video could save someone's life. Share it now.